Hello, welcome to Human Tech, a podcast about the intersection between humans and technology. My name is Guthrie. I'm here with Susan. Hey, Susan.
Hello,
And we are live again.
I'm alive.
No, I said we are live.
I know I'm teasing you.
You're just
Yeah, we're live.
pulling
I
my leg here.
what?
Pulling my leg?
I am. I was
Mm.
pulling your leg. Well, I'm. I put out a little notice that said we were going to be on and that people should join us and join in on the chat. So I got my eye on the chat.
Okay, fantastic.
We'll see if anyone joins and asks us a question or makes a comment.
Okay.
All
Um,
right. I hear
yeah,
your cat in the background, so if you have
yeah.
to go take care of the cat, you
No,
can
he
go
just,
do that.
just might meow. So
He's
you should.
joining in.
He's joining in. So how about you tell us about our topic for today? I want to do something just a little more fun, a little more breezy and
I
everything.
know. I had all these topics and you're like, that's too much thinking. That's too much thinking. I don't know if this one's any less thinking, but I thought I had suggested we talk about virtual reality and specifically our desires and expectations around virtual reality. What do you think about that?
Yeah, no, I
Will
think
that
that's
be
great.
okay?
We had this on the list for
A
quite a long
while.
time. Yeah, and now with the Meta announcement about sort of
The metaverse.
there's such a lot of buzz. And so just
All
happy.
right. So how are we going to kick this off?
Um. Oh. We do actually have someone
We have someone
around.
joined us.
Yeah,
Yay.
Eric Oakland
Okay.
says hi.
Oh,
So
we have a bunch of people. So does Eileen.
oh, that's
I like
fantastic.
it. All right, Guthrie, how do you want to start talking about virtual reality? And
I
people who are
yeah.
joining us on chat, please feel free to join in and give us your ideas as we go along.
Well, we probably won't say them on air, but if you have questions, we may ask questions.
There you go. Thank
Yeah.
you.
So the first thought I want to talk is if you want to talk just at a very high level about your usability expectations about virtual reality and augmented reality. And I do want to box this in, right? Because like, yeah, sure, in 100 years we'll all be living in pods, or I want to keep this not necessarily uh, completely devoid of future stuff, but we'll talk about the near term, which is sort of maybe the next 5 years,
Okay.
4 or 5 years.
Okay.
And then if you want to talk about sort of a medium long term, which is maybe 10 years from
Okay.
now,
All right.
right? But we will
You want to rein it in a
assume,
little, which I'm
yeah,
all
yeah.
for.
Let's just assume that given enough time in the future, anything is possible, that it all works out, and you know, et cetera, et cetera. So, um, but let's just start sort of with the short and medium term.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. There's so many even just time boxing it the way you did, and even if we just focused on the user experience of virtual reality,
Yeah.
there's already so many things you could talk about and deal with. I mean, I actually have delved a little bit into the not only user experience but even narrower into like the user interface, user interaction things around virtual reality, which are really interesting, just about the design of the visual spaces and what do you do with that. There are, you know, here I'll bring up just some of them. What I think of as the more obvious UX problems. Let's start there. So you have the problem of uh, people who are wearing a VR headset hurting themselves because they are moving around and they start moving around in their virtual space and aren't paying attention to where they're moving around in reality space.
No, I should actually say something really quick,
What?
because I do want to also add that a lot of these, we have a client who's rolling out who's doing some usability testing or big picture thoughts, and whenever they kind of talk to people who might end up using this, a lot of the discussion ends up about the specifics of the technological implementation. So,
Yes.
I do want to, bring that up, right? Because that is one thing that is sort of like a technological problem, that we are not experts again in that. I watched the entire Meta keynote, by the way, if that counts. I've used VR. You have a little less experience than me, but so we have some, but we are obviously not like
Yeah,
experts
very
in
good point. I do not want to
technical
position
aspects,
us as experts in
the technical
virtual
aspect.
reality. Yes.
Now, what I will say is that, so for example, there's rumors that the new Facebook owns Oculus, Meta, sorry, Meta, Facebook, they own Oculus. That the new Oculus Pro, or there's some other, I think it's called Stellaris or something. No, that's a video game. It doesn't matter. That the new one they were coming was going to have a lot more eye tracking, a lot more sensors, and potentially one of the things that this will unlock is the ability to have programs show you your space with a camera in VR. So your face is covered, okay, but
Yeah.
you
But
but
you can
you
see.
see your room, right? So you're
But
it's kind of augmented reality.
doesn't that take away from being in because then you're not going to be immersed. I'm immersed in the VR experience, except over here I can see that I'm really still in my office.
Well, if you want to get creative about it, and this is well, maybe we can get into sort of my like hesitations about it, because there does seem to be sort of like it's going to be this amazing thing and blah 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 and it's super cool, and it's like, but only if the implementation is perfect. And if there is a single part of the implementation that sort of isn't perfect, then the
Then
whole
the whole thing is
kind
not
of
going to work. That's true.
so so
That's a really good point.
so I just want to say that there is like you can imagine a software that, for example, so you're in like your AR space, right? And you can switch between, okay, I'm in my room, but now I want to go like Mark Zuckerberg did. I'm out in the Alps or something in like my cabin, and you could have the same layout, right? There could be like a chair in your AR space, or if you're
Yeah, I
in a
see what you're
theater,
saying.
right? So
So
if
I'm
you're
still
using,
very aware of my current physical surroundings
but
within but now they're in a larger space. And you're right. And I
no,
think
well, but then no, they're in an augmented space.
right, right.
Yeah.
I think that you're right. I think we make the mistake of thinking that VR is a very narrow thing, and it must be total immersion. Think about immersion, right? We get very immersed in what we're doing and don't what that experience is like. You're doing something on your computer and you're on your monitor, and the monitor is this big, and you forget about everything else around you, except not really, right? So I agree with you. I think we need to expand our ideas and our definitions of what total immersion really means,
Or if that's even a
uh,
goal.
and whether it's a goal. Another thing I want to mention is just I'd be interested, and I don't know if anyone is checking out the we talk a fair amount in our workshops and so on about the importance of peripheral vision, right? And you think of VR and you think of that total immersion, and that would include central vision and peripheral vision. But I think you've got options there, right? Our peripheral vision right now does warn us when we need to pay attention about something else going on besides what we're directly looking at. And so it might be that, that's the best space in which to alert people. Is there are all kinds of things that could be done in peripheral vision. Yeah. Yeah, yeah, I like this way of thinking, and I don't know, Guthrie. Do you know how much? I'm sure I think somebody's doing research on different levels of immersion and what might be best, and perhaps total immersion is not 100% the way to go.
Well, I do know. I mean, it's been part of the problem is that it's sort of a little bit like talking about cellular phones because
Okay.
it's this technology and sorry, different people can imagine a different future for this technology with
Yes.
different stuff. So if I go to one company and I say, here's this thing where you have the internet on a small device in your pocket and you can call people. For one group, it's like, okay, here's the future. People will it'll be like what is it, chain group calling from 1,000 years ago, where you and all your friends will all get on the phone
Get on
together,
at the same time.
get
Right.
on at the same time, and you all talk, and then a different company is like, no, the phone is going to be a computer and you're going to watch videos on your phone and
Right.
you're going to
Right.
use it for
Right.
a phone. And then there's another company that's like, oh well, as you famously say with like your old Motorola example, only like the president would need one in case there's an
Right.
emergency, or
Right.
some military strike force or something.
That's the story about my conversation with the guy who ran the team that actually invented the cell phone, and
Yeah.
that was their idea of how it was going to be used. Yeah.
So there is just like a general sense that there is a little bit of confusion about what this future actually is. And that is one of the reasons I will say I'm a little skeptical in the short term about what's
Do,
going to happen.
do you remember the conversation we had? What city were we in? I don't remember if it was Chicago or San Francisco. It was one of those two. We had a conversation. I'll leave the name and the company out of it, with someone who was working on some research to use VR headsets to make them available to travelers in airplanes, so that you would get, on the plane and you'd get in your seat. And then instead of watching a movie, you'd just get on your virtual reality headset and immerse yourself in something. And it was as a way, did he say this or was this just my impression, to, you know, keep everyone just busy, and so they would stop being restless and agitated and asking for things, right? Just give people a headset and then they'll just go off on their own adventure during the whole plane ride. So I agree with you that it, like all new technologies, I don't think we know how people are going to want to use it and how they will use it and how we'll invent ways to use it, and probably we'll be wrong if we try and guess.
So that's why,
However, I do have a question for you around that.
yeah, and then because I have an idea of how we then proceed then.
Well, that was kind of my question.
Okay,
Then, so
so
how do we move forward if we're just kind of guessing and we
right.
know we may get it wrong?
Right. Okay. So the way to do it is to first part one, distill what every future has in common. So, for example, in our smartphone analogy,
Yeah.
every smartphone, and I mean, yeah, there's some weird edge cases, but for the vast majority of kind of visions, for a mobile cellular phone device, you hold it in your hand, right? That's just like a thing that, like,
Yeah.
generally
Okay.
that's like okay.
Are
So
you saying that was planned? That was anticipated ahead of time?
no, I just like for all the versions of a smartphone of what that future was, there are some common elements to it,
Okay. All
right?
right.
And so we can talk about the common elements about sort of a AR VR
All right,
thing.
what are they? Do you know?
So one, strapping a giant thing to your head.
That's going to be the vision?
Yeah. Now, like I said, in the future, 10 years plus, maybe there's tech where it all fits into a contact lens and it's easy, or
Yeah.
it's some
But you're saying for right now,
holographic something.
short
5 years,
term, you put on the
maybe
headset.
10 years. You're putting a headset on.
Okay.
Um,
All
so
right.
so well, so let's talk about that from a user perspective because, um, Mark Zuckerberg had this thing where they're making the metaverse, and we'll. So first, I want to talk about what's similar, and then we can talk about sort of each individual vision and whether we think you know some pitfalls or not.
Okay. Okay.
Um, so the first part thing on your head, comfortable, and it, it I'm I'm not exactly sure that it provide like what is the benefit that it provides, being an AR necessarily over just looking at a screen. Right? Like you could there's no at the end of the day, a AR VR headset is nothing but software. You're looking at a screen, except the screen is two
Is all
lenses
around you.
in
Yeah.
your with little things in your eyes that are mimicking what you
Yes.
normally see. But it is just a screen. Like the metaverse, there's no reason you couldn't do that on a regular monitor.
Right. The metaverse. Well, does the metaverse assume VR? Not necessarily.
It mostly does. It
Oh,
doesn't always, but like at
it
least
mainly
the
does.
Facebook iteration
Okay.
of of
Of it
Meta
does.
doesn't necessarily say it has to be, but
But
that
it's
was in all the
implied.
renders, in the examples,
Okay.
everything was in.
All right. So you think that we should assume that for the next 5 years or not assume that?
Yeah, I think you need to assume that in order for VR or AR to, maybe not AR, but at least VR to work, to be immersed,
Yes.
you have to put
You
on,
have a headset. Okay.
and it will have to be plugged in.
It's not running on batteries.
Not any of the good ones.
Okay.
Maybe in 10 years, yes, it'll be
Okay. But in
powerful
five
enough.
years, it's plugged in and you're putting on a helmet. Okay. All right. What else do you want to assume? And why is this important to assume these things?
Well, I think that there is an inherent, um, from a usability perspective,
Yeah.
I think there is sort of like a mental model, something about doing an extra step. So, for example, let's just assume that we're in the house wearing sweatpants and we need to go somewhere, and that would require putting pants on and going outside. It's not
Okay.
difficult to put on nicer pants, nicer clothes,
And
or
walk
in
out
your
the door.
case you live in the frigid Arctic at the
I
moment.
do at the
It's,
moment.
no, it
Very cold.
got above 0 degrees Fahrenheit today, so it's nice and warm.
No, it hasn't yet.
Not yet, okay, but maybe soon.
I'm hoping.
um yeah, that's about negative, I don't know, 17, 18 centigrade, something like that.
It's
Never 15.
bad. It's just bad.
um so for you to just take why don't you just take the garbage out?
Yeah, that's a big deal for me.
It's not hard, you just have to put on
I have to
a
put
little bit
on
of
layers.
anything else. It's even
I
less
gotta
than
have
the desk.
socks and
Socks,
boots and a
boots, and
coat and
jacket.
hat and yeah.
Is it difficult to put on a jacket?
No, but it is a hassle.
It is a hassle. And so the idea of, okay, I need to go, I need to get my headset, I gotta be in the space and move the chairs and put the thing on and hook it up and strap it in and make sure it's set up correctly and then log in, and like it might be a hassle. And if there's anything we
Yeah.
know about humans and hassles, is that they hate them.
Yeah.
The other thing that I do worry about is while the tech is getting better and better and better, to one of the problems about being in VR is that our brains really need a lot of data. And if
Yeah.
you don't have enough data, it can cause, like I said, headaches, can cause motion sickness in some
Yeah,
people.
we especially need certain kinds of data when we're talking about moving through space.
Yep. It just, and really quick, really, really quick.
Yeah.
And in high, so there, that is getting better as the processing gets better, as the screens, they'll be able to do higher resolutions and screens. All these things are getting better.
But
I know one of the tricks that you'll find this may be interesting, um, that the new, professional Oculus, uh, the, the newer VR headsets are going to use eye tracking, and it'll only render in very high definition what you're actually looking at. So if you're watching a movie, it's just rendering that, and then the peripheral vision, instead of having to use the computational power to render that at 4K or 8K, whatever the resolution is, it'll drop that down so that it can really
well, then this is so
exhaust
interesting.
power. And then
I
if you look
find
around, it'll render stuff.
I know I find that interesting because you know our peripheral vision without the VR headset is by nature blurry.
Right.
There's a woman at MIT that's done some great research on this, and we don't see very well in our peripheral vision. So,
But
if we
however,
wanted what
well, but the thing is, our peripheral vision changes depending on where our eyes are.
constantly
So how fast can you flick your eyes around? That's how fast it would have to then change the
something
resolution,
clear versus blurry.
right? So it's a little hard.
Are we okay? All right. Now I have more questions for you. Should we be? Are we going to be trying to simulate that real life in the VR? Or is the whole idea of VR is that I mean, okay, so first of all, I think some of the issues that our body has dealing with VR is because it's not doing the normal vision things that we're used to, and our brain is having a hard time with that. Um, so does that mean that we try and simulate the way our eyes really work and our brains really work, or does it mean that we're just going to be learning a new way to perceive reality?
So part of these have to do with the way the tech works, and so I'm not gonna jump into that just because we're trying to not talk
You're
about,
trying to
well,
keep within the
yeah.
reasonable 5 years. Yeah.
But also, I'm not. It depends on the way the
Yeah.
tech is implemented. So, with that said, I do wonder if there is an unnaturalness to it
Yes.
that people just don't really like. It's
Yes.
one thing to look at a screen, and then the rest of your world is what we normally do,
Yes.
and it's what we see and what we do. But to completely remove that just might be, on a human level, uncomfortable and just doesn't feel right. It
Yes.
doesn't feel natural. And so, for example, if you recall, there was like the 3D TV craze.
Yeah.
Everyone will sit around and they'll put glasses on and watch a movie.
Yeah.
People are like, "No, I don't. I'm not gonna
Don't
wear
want to
glasses.
do that.
No,
Yeah.
I'm just gonna watch the movie in 2D. It's fine. I just don't care."
Right.
And so
Right.
I do wonder. This is my first big question. The first big hurdle is, what's the killer use case that would, I mean, besides like entertainment, right? Like, obviously it would be fun to have a VR headset to play a video game in VR every now and
Or go undersea.
there might
Go
be
into the ocean and look
yeah,
at the
or
coral reef.
watch a
And all
movie in 3 dimensions and move around the
that.
characters,
Right.
and like there are cool, very cool things that one can do.
Entertainment.
The question is, so in the sort of the metaverse version, um, the idea is that people are going to be spending large quantities of time in VR. That all of your day-to-day meetings, of which you have a lot of
I have a
meetings,
lot of
yeah,
meetings.
but like that like most of those will happen remotely, and you'll be in VR the whole time. You know, like, I am not sure that there is necessarily a benefit to that experience that is VR or AR dependent. So, for example, a lot of the cool things about the metaverse, right? Like going to, like having a meeting that's remote, but it looks like everyone's in the same room with their avatars, right? Why there's why does that have to be in virtual reality? Why couldn't you just look at a screen and see all the people in the room with their avatars? But you're just like, right? So you have a camera on you, and so you're just watching everyone else in the meeting from like a bird's eye view, and you could pan around. It'd be like a video game. You could
Right.
change point of view or whatever, but like like so it looks like we're all in the same room talking together as opposed to just blocks on a screen.
Right.
That's the magic of part of the AR vision. I just don't know why I would need to experience that in 3 dimensions
So it
versus
sounds to
look at it
me
like I'm doing now.
like you might not be investing in VR stock at the current time.
I mean, I
You're not even going to answer that question. I do understand what you're saying, and I don't know that. I mean, I can tell you, me personally, I do not want to put on a VR headset and for hours on end every day to join a meeting. And uh, I think it is interesting that humans have seemed to have easily adapted to combination worlds, to being in combinations of worlds at the same time.
Mhm.
So that I'm sitting here right now and I'm looking at my screen and I'm looking at the video and we have people, chatting with us. And I'm also in my office looking out the window and I'm perfectly comfortable being in these two spaces. And I like being in the two spaces. That to me is added an add-on. It's a worthwhile add-on. I think the same thing is really true with our phones. And I think we've proven we like being in multiple spaces. It's very popular for people to be in multiple spaces. In fact, so popular they almost wish they didn't like it as much and they wish they didn't do it as much. But it's very easy for us to pick up the phone and be here and interacting in here and interacting in physical space. So, and I don't know that we would have necessarily um, uh, thought that was true.
Hmm.
I think if you had asked me that a long time ago before we had these multiple spaces, I might have said, oh, no, people won't want to do that. You know, people will want to be in the space they're in. They're used to being in one physical location and seeing what their eyes are seeing, and they're not going to want to be in two places at once. That'll be disorienting. And it is in a way, and it definitely, causes fatigue, right? We know that that's part of our split attention, multitasking, um, task switching, and that does cause fatigue. And there are some things about that people don't like, but it is also now very obvious that we are comfortable with it, and in many ways we do like it.
Hmm.
Uh, and I don't. So I'm hesitant to make predictions about what we will and won't want to do. I'm hesitant to do that because I think we get that wrong a lot.
That's fair. Though that is, again, that's not necessarily a physical discomfort necessarily. That's sort of like a
No,
mental. That's a mental thing,
psychological thing. Right,
and
right,
and
right.
that may be easier than physical things. Um, there was another. Eileen mentioned another use case for VR that makes a lot of sense. VR/AR, like you put the headset on, and then you could try out different furniture in a room and see the feel how it is. Okay, I want this color versus this color. Or you're shopping for clothes, and so you can like look at yourself in the mirror and try the different sizes and try the different stuff and sort of see how it looks from your perspective. And
Yeah, and
that's a great use case. I'm not saying that there won't be any good use cases for VR or that it will not continue to gain adoption and popularity. Um, but it's the I guess we should at this point. I'll let you finish your point, and then we should probably move on to specific visions of VR and whether we think those visions are better or worse.
yeah, I was just going to add that I think the particular use case that Eileen mentioned, you get it, and the ones you were just talking about, Guthrie, I think then you do get into that question: is it worth the hassle of going to get the headset and putting it on and making sure it's plugged in and that you're logged in, right? For that, that's a good question. Which also then the other point I was going to make is that I think the use case for augmented reality is, to me, is more obvious in terms of the short term. That there's lots of things that would be useful and easy to do by adding data, um, in instead of just encasing yourself in the VR. You're playing around with
I was
being
just
able
trying.
to
I was just
show
showing
comments.
the
Yeah,
actual
you can actually
comments.
show
This
them. I
is
didn't know you could do that.
that is
Anyway,
great.
what was the thing you wanted to transition into?
Okay, so that was one of like the commonalities
Yeah.
of it that just uh, that I do think is might be a slight barrier. Now,
Yeah.
so there are a couple different other variations on this
Okay.
that may be more successful that require less of a physical
Okay.
uncomfortable
Like.
toll. For example, I do wonder if the tech may be coming in the next 5 years potentially. Um, more of a hologram 3D screen,
I was going to ask you about
right? So
that.
so there could be ways to um, not necessarily be in VR, but you're watching, but you can have some of the three-dimensional aspects to
Yes.
it. And because it uses eye tracking, as you move around your screen, it's almost like you're looking into a box.
Yes.
In Chicago, where I live, in the Art Institute in Chicago, in the basement is my favorite exhibit there. They have the Monet exhibit is probably my favorite, but my second one is the miniatures, and it's
Oh,
unbelievable.
yeah,
They
yeah.
have like um,
I know. I'm trying to remember if I've
like a
seen it.
whole Victorian. It's houses from all the different areas, classic colonial houses and Victorian houses and Tudor stuff and all the there's like 50 or 80 of them, and they're all made out of they're all like these they're miniatures, right? So someone
Yeah.
meticulously little detail with all the molding and stuff in like the
Yeah.
tiniest little things. The whole rooms are only, I don't know, maybe like 3 by 2, but it's
Yeah.
cool. So you walk up to it and there's a glass panel in front of you, and then there's a three-dimensional sort of room that you look into, right? And
Yeah.
it's the miniature. But because it's a room, as you move around, you can sort of
You can see
sometimes you can see
different
through
things.
doorways to other rooms and stuff.
Yeah.
And so there is sort of an aspect to it where you're looking around and you're looking up and you're looking down. You can kind of see into it. And so maybe with there are some three-dimensional screens or other experiences that can incorporate some of those aspects without having to necessarily put on a headset. That's part one.
Yes.
Part two is obviously AR, augmented reality tech. So I hold up my phone and I'm seeing the room, right? And then I can do stuff on my phone, put the furniture where I want. I'm like, oh, that's kind of cool. Look at, that's kind of interesting. Um, or uh, there was Meta, Facebook, Meta. In their slide, they had this sort of vision of an experience where you're at a concert, you know, with all your friends, um, and you know you're like sitting there watching it, but the concert is happening in virtual reality. I do wonder if there is um, maybe a way where you can just watch it on your TV, but then uh, you know, with your phone, you could just pick your phone up and move your phone around and like look at your friend's avatar and wave, or take a screenshot, or like ways to sort of have sort of an augmented reality experience or do some of this stuff just within a device, within a phone that has the motion tracking
Yeah,
all.
it's interesting because I think you're talking about perhaps, I don't know if separating is the right word, but if we if we separate, I'll use separate the technology
Mm-hmm.
from the I guess we could say the use cases, or the things that we can do, right? If we separate the technology from what you want to do with it, then I think it opens it up into, okay, yeah, you moving around the room, that would be good. You don't have to do that in VR. You can do that in, perhaps AR, or something with 3 dimensions. So, uh, you know, not getting hung up on, well, it's VR technology you put on the headset. That's not assuming that has to be the way you do it, but to just think about what are the ways that people might want to uh, not only move through space, but visually and mentally move through. And are there other ways to do that besides VR? That may be more productive, more useful, um, more realistic.
How about this as a medium intermediate tech?
What?
Instead of putting on a whole headset, you have an augmented reality pair of glasses.
Well, didn't
So
didn't we try that? Somebody tried that. Oh,
they will continue
somebody
to try
big
it.
tried that. Yeah, why didn't that work?
The tech wasn't good enough.
In what way?
In the demos that they showed, it was super cool and really high resolution and really smart. The reality is that the processing for that
Wasn't fast
wasn't
enough,
good enough,
so it's not giving you that what you want instantly.
or it wasn't. It's just not. It wasn't futuristic enough. It wasn't useful enough. The software wasn't good enough. The hardware wasn't good enough. It was buggy. Um, I don't. There weren't enough use cases for it. But for example, let's just say you wanted to do that sort of meeting, right? I could imagine a situation in which instead of having like, you know, um, if you're having like a one-on-one like we're doing, right? Like instead of being totally immersed, what if I just have a little headset and I can sort of, I get to experience talking to you in your like, I sit at a table and across from you, I just put an empty chair, and then the little glasses can just fill in sort of like a little sort of hologram thing there. And so I'm still looking mostly at real life. I don't have to strap a whole headset to my head. I just have a little piece of glasses, or something like that. But I get to have this sort of experience. So there is that sort of door number two. There is, instead of the whole headset, you don't get as immersive an experience, but there's a simpler thing that you just put on that's maybe a little more acceptable for people, that still allows somewhat of an augmented sort of reality experience. I could imagine a use case in which you walk into the grocery store. Um, let's just pick Amazon. They own Whole Foods. So in your Amazon account, before you go to the store, you make a grocery list and you put on the Amazon Prime head, little glasses before you go in, or maybe you bring your own glasses and it's the Amazon app, and you walk through the store, and there's just a little thing that has your grocery list and little directions in the store to tell you where all the things are. So you start in the produce, it's like, and so it's like ginger is this way, and you can get, the romaine lettuce is over there, and don't forget tomatoes, right? So like it's sort of navigating you. You walk through the store and you get the stuff, but then you're also being in a grocery store and you can pick up stuff and look at fruits, and it'll tell you what the prices are of things, and if something's on sale. And so you're having this sort of interactive experience that is sort of this is why the future of AR and VR is so good and blah blah blah. But you're not necessarily needing an entire headset. You're still able to go out in the world and interact and walk around. So that's sort of door number two. And I think that may be a little that may be where I think there's more traction, perhaps. The computational power required is a little less. The difficulty putting it into a small device is a little more because you can't just plug it into a big computer somewhere. The software is a little more
Yeah.
because in VR you basically just get to go into a video game.
Yeah.
They're using video game software to render a
Right.
world in 3 dimensions, and then they just put you in it.
Right.
That's pretty easy because it's a controlled environment. We know how to do video games. We know how to do 3D modeling and Unity and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
Um, Whereas if you are augmented reality, the software is harder because you have to put the right stuff in based on a camera's view. Okay, but that is also an option. That is sort of interesting.
As you were talking, I'm wondering, what I would really like. Now we get into what does Susan want right now? Here's what I want. Um, I want you to put on the glasses and walk through the grocery store so I can stay home and you can shop for me and
Hmm.
you can walk through and I can say, oh yeah, 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 give me one of those apples, Guthrie. And you can do the shopping for me, and or the shopper, and it can be delivered or I'll come pick it up. That's what I want. Can we do that? As you were describing the grocery thing, I was like, yeah, I don't want to go to the grocery store. I'm going to have someone else go to the grocery store
So
for
what
me.
you're
But
saying
I'd
is,
love to really be there with them and see what they're seeing
so
and
like a
make my
like
decisions.
a robot with a camera that goes around, but you get to see what the robot sees, and you're like, okay, I want that orange, and you press on it, and then the
Please.
robot grabs the orange.
I am ready. Can we do that right now?
Definitely not. The tech is
I
not
would
ready
pay
for that.
money for that service.
But
I,
you you can have
that's what I
someone
want.
shop for you now.
But I can't. Yes, but I do. I do.
COVID being
I
what it is, sure,
COVID
yes.
being what it is, that is mainly how I shop, and the order is about 75% correct every time. I would love it to have a higher percentage of correct because I could see what's going on.
But that you don't but that is not necessarily a function for all the tech innovation that would go into creating a robot that walk around that you could then use software to control remotely from your
Yes,
VR
yes.
headset at home. It's probably easier just to figure out a way to have your shopping order get selected correctly.
That is the way to get the shopping order selected correctly.
I do understand what you're
I
saying.
just want everyone to solve my problems.
Well, so okay, so let's get into the meta version of things then, the
Okay.
Facebook meta
All
version.
right.
Again, I watched the entire keynote, top to bottom.
Yeah. Is that worth it? Should we do that or not?
Um,
I was hesitant to do it because I thought they were going to go off on some. I haven't watched it because I figured it would go off on
it
tangents and
does.
I
It's
would
really
just like
long.
roll
Um,
my eyes.
here's so okay. So there are a couple components to the Facebook thing. I'll try to describe this the best I can. Apologies
Okay.
to people who are actually experts in this.
Okay.
It kind of goes a little something like this. Facebook wants to create this metaverse, which is just a way of saying a but groups of software that are represented in a three-dimensional space,
Okay.
much like a video game,
Yes.
and then interacted instead of just by random characters or software, interacted by other people So it's sort
Yes.
of like a very large multiplayer game where lots of other people are going into this game, this 3D representation of something, and doing things.
Yeah.
Okay. So part one of that is obviously VR, because that's a good way to get into the game or to
Right.
display the game.
Right.
They happen to also own Oculus, which is one of the
Happened.
large
Yes.
VR headset companies.
Yes.
So they are well positioned to do this. So
Yeah.
that's part one. Part two of this strategy is about making money. Why should we let other companies sell things and make money from them when we can just sell imaginary things and make
Right.
money selling that?
Right.
So why should there be artists that make art that you put on the wall? We can't, Facebook can't control, Meta can't control what's on my wall. So if you have people in a virtual space, much like the Sims, this is all just the Sims,
Yeah.
people will pay money and we get a cut of that,
Right.
to then
To have
art
things. Yep.
online. And one of the things I will say is a lot of the focus of the Meta keynote, Meta talk, and it was like 90 minutes, Meta movie, was announcement, was all about how it would be empowering artists. There would be creators who would be creating stuff in the metaverse that people would buy.
Yeah.
And so it's sort of this thing, and of course then Facebook being in the middle, Meta being in the middle, collecting money off that. That's
Right.
sort of where you get into NFT
Right.
territory, right? You go to a concert, you are experiencing this concert in VR, and then that experience is an NFT that you can then
Right.
purchase. Uh,
Right.
I think NFTs are sort of interesting. I as an attorney, I find NFTs to be especially fascinating since in the United States things are we have these things called copyright laws that actually denote ownership over uh, things that are not physical,
Yes.
and NFTs don't confer ownership.
Right.
So I'm not,
Where does that fit from an attorney point of
sure how
view?
that
Right.
necessarily helps people. Maybe the future of NFTs is just a token, sorry, a crypto, um, a, a, a blockchain based copyright system. Maybe that's the best of both worlds. At the moment, I find it hard to justify buying something that doesn't give me any property rights. You know, like if you go to the grocery store and you pay $1 for an apple, but then someone else,
Yes, but
but then you don't get
must
to have the apple.
but you must admit people spend enormous amounts of money on we all do on things that don't result in ownership of anything. We pay for experiences.
That's true, but at least you get to have the experience.
Well,
If you buy, so see, because it
we
was
pay
NFT,
we pay for you just sent me an article recently. We pay for the feeling that we are up higher in the hierarchy.
yes, this is
We
true.
pay for the feeling that we have status. We pay for the feeling that we are important. We pay for a lot of things in which we not only don't have anything, we don't even have an, an actual experience, but we do have a feeling,
So this is a perfect transition because you've brought me exactly to the problem that I think I have with
which is
Meta's
what?
vision. Meta has their whole thing is premised on sort of an exclusivity of some capacity, and that everyone and everything and all the creators and all the things, and it will all be in this ecosystem, the metaverse. Okay?
Yes,
There is nothing preventing any other company from just making a different one.
of
And in
course.
fact, there will be. Like if
Of
Facebook thinks
course.
they're the only ones, yeah. So uh, uh, obviously, Facebook is going to do one. I'm sure Google will do one.
Yeah.
I am sure that some Tencent in some capacity will have one,
And some unknown that hasn't arrived yet.
but it hasn't arrived yet. So my sort of my issue with the idea of exclusivity, right? So let's say I create an NFT and we have an NFT of the different parts of this podcast, right? And you can own the NFT of the minute of this podcast. But there's nothing necessarily preventing someone else from just doing that same thing again. And then I could have an NFT of the exact same thing. It's just on a I'm just copying it. It's a copy of something. So at some point, and the reason that um, that Bitcoin has been so successful is that it has become sort of the default. It was the original, but it's also sort of the default thing that is the biggest. It doesn't mean something can't supplant it, but a lot of alternative coins have tried. They have not necessarily succeeded. Though I guess you could make an argument for Ethereum and stuff like that. The point being, it is hard then to how the metaverse works and why I would really want to get invested in one sort of metaverse and buy all sorts of art in there, blah blah blah. When we do a lot of remote meetings, some of them are on Teams, some of them are on Zoom, some of them use like Citrix. We're on Restream right now. We're on LinkedIn. Some of them like there are so many different softwares to do this very basic thing, and everyone has to be on the same software to be on the same. So this idea that there's just going to be one platform and that everyone agrees, like, okay, this is the platform and we're
Yeah,
done
that is
now.
not going to happen.
That's not going to happen. And that sort of fragmentation is going to cause real problems really quickly.
Will
Now,
it?
I think so because
But we fragment all the time over everything. I mean, how many
and it's a
streaming services are there?
yeah, people can't stand it.
How many
This is
social media channels are there?
well, okay, so no, that's a perfect example because what Meta has said is that there will be an interoperability between them and things that don't exist. I don't know how that's going to happen. That's what they say. So, like, if you buy something in their space, you'll be able to have it in a different space
Yeah,
because
we don't know if
something
we believe
about
that.
open source something. I don't know if I believe any of it, but that's the theory is that you'll be able to take it wherever you go. And the social media aspect is a really good one because there is software that allows you to write something once and it gets posted
Yeah, kind of.
immediately.
Although I find it impossible to use, and so I end up posting in multiple places. Um, yeah, yeah.
But yeah, but the fragmentation is a real issue. And back when everything was on Netflix or cable, it was pretty easy. But now that everyone has their own streaming service, it's becoming very difficult here in the States because it used to be Netflix and then it was like, okay, Netflix or Hulu.
Oh, now
Um,
it's like
so we have Netflix,
dozens. Oh no, don't even go through it. They just goes on and
Disney
on and on and
Plus,
on. It goes on
Apple
and on. It just
TV.
goes on and on.
Yeah, there's
But I mean, my favorite thing is on.
well,
I
this is cable. This was the whole point of
I
cable
know,
is
I
that
know.
instead of having to have one channel, you pay someone to bundle all the channels
Well,
together.
and then cables and is I
Lots of people
I
have done this
mean
before. So,
I
yeah.
I love about my TV and my remote control that I can press a button and I can just name something and it'll show me which streaming service I can watch that on because I don't want to
Right.
go research it because
Now
there's so many of them.
imagine if instead of streaming,
Yeah,
you were buying movies and buying TV shows.
I do buy
And
movies.
no. So if you wanted to watch something,
Yeah.
Let's say you wanted to, the only way to watch, you had to buy a Marvel movie,
Yeah.
but they were only on Disney Plus.
Yeah.
But then if you wanted to buy like It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, you had to go to like Hulu or
Yeah.
something.
Yeah.
It's one thing to have a subscription and to stream stuff.
Yeah.
It's very different to purchase
Right.
things
And
and
where
then
is it?
switch.
Where?
So
Right.
here's an example, right? One of the examples in the Meta presentation was that you and your friends were all going to a concert, and
Yeah.
you're all watching this your favorite artist on this in this sort of VR concert. Um, or you're like watching a movie together, but it would just require everyone being on the same platform.
Same one. Yeah.
People can't. Some people have Xboxes and some people have PlayStations and some people have PCs, and they all own the same game and they can't play together.
Yeah.
And so it's sort of like, okay, well then I'm just going to do my small thing over here,
Yeah.
and that works pretty well if you're just doing entertainment. But if
Yeah.
you move into the work arena, stuff gets kind of weird pretty fast. I wanted to show this this comment. Um, it's maybe too it's too long, but I just want to say it's sort of fun, like, what is art? That's a question that
All right.
I always ask my artist friends and they glare at me. Um, but it's a very good it's a very good question about like,
All right. So
is it a marketplace?
okay.
Is it a
To some, I want to. We need to bring this all to a close. I'm going to do that by asking you a
we did
question.
not get very far.
Well, we can do another one if we have to. But I have a question for you. Do you think that do we need to answer some of these basic questions about what this technology is and what we're doing with it before we can really move forward with it? Or do you think we're just going to move forward with it and hopefully get to a place where the best uses kind of fall out of there?
That's a good question. I don't think we need to necessarily figure it out. But without open standards, which has happened, like if you look at USB, pretty successful open standard, but that is pretty much the exception
Hmm.
and not the norm. And when it
So,
comes to
so if we,
software,
yeah,
really the only standard that's worked has been email. And
yeah,
that's 25 years old, and people are still using it for critical parts of most of their lives
yeah.
just because it's like the only open source, non
Hmm.
fragmented thing. And I have a hard time believing that all the giant, greedy tech companies in the world are going to figure out a way to do complete
Collaborate.
interoperability through VR, AR,
Yeah.
work, all the different stuff. They're all just going to work together. It'll be seamless.
But that's why it's called the metaverse,
Exactly. Yeah.
because we're
Yeah.
all working on it
Oh,
together.
oh. What it's really going to be is the fragment verse.
The fragment, the Fragaverse. Let's call it the
The
Fragaverse.
fragaverse.
All right,
That's pretty
Guthrie,
funny.
we have managed to whittle away an entire hour, but an interesting conversation. This is one of those ones I'd like to go back and look at 5 years from now and see.
How wrong we are.
Yeah.
I do that from time to time, and boy, did we sort of miss the boat.
All right. Well, maybe we'll do another episode on things we missed the boat on.
Like, I know we did one on auditory user interfaces, right when Alexos were
We
taking
missed
off.
the boat on that.
I just think that like we thought, because it was moving up, right? And we thought that there would be a ton of that kind of stuff.
And then it didn't.
And then it's kind of petered out where it's like anything beyond like playing some music or turning on the lights or something. It's like,
Not happening.
do I really? I mean, I'm sure some people do, but like,
Oh, yeah. Well, we could do a
I think a
whole
lot of people have these smart
we
devices.
we could do a whole hour
Hmm.
on how language interfaces continually disappoint me in my lifetime. But
Okay,
maybe,
well, hold on,
maybe
hold on.
another one.
Um, well, do you have two, like a minute or two for some questions?
Yeah, absolutely. What are
For
the
short Q&A.
questions?
Okay.
Yes.
Well, if someone wants to ask a question or two,
Oh,
we'll
we
take.
should have left more time for that
We should have
then.
left up
Yes.
more time, but yeah,
But
go ahead
yeah,
and ask your question.
and type
Okay.
in
So
and
so,
we'll
so
answer.
the first big question, and we only have time for one or two, but we can do a couple. Um, just as a sort of, this is to summarize, because you wanted to sort of summarize where we got in part one, which was not very far, but okay. It, in a broad general sense, okay, in much the way that social media became our future, became very, not, doesn't dominate our lives, but certainly is a big aspect of our world,
Yes.
is this idea of some sort of virtual online, um, second life, but different this time. Oh, this is a very good question coming up. Thank you for that question. This is great. Do you think that that will be sort of a large component of our worlds in the 5 to 10 year window?
I'm going to say no.
Okay. That it will remain sort of a fun niche.
Edge case.
Okay. Uh I'm kind of inclined to agree with you a little bit. A little bit. I think some of the AR stuff has a little higher chance. I think a lot of this stuff in screens
Yeah,
has a higher chance.
I think there are pieces of the technology that will get used in other places and will become very common. But the metaverse as it's being currently described,
Where everyone sits on their couch with a VR
no,
headset on.
I'm going to say no.
Okay, and here's the follow-up question, which is just fantastic. Thank you for this question. We'll put this in. So
Hot or not?
how tie our guesses of this tech in with the tools and skills that a UX designer will know, because you are Mrs. UX over here, the queen of usability.
Oh God. Um, I think I think it's always a good idea for if you're in the field of UX to try, and it's not easy, to stay up on what's going on, what other people like Meta or anyone else is saying is going to be the future. Um, as soon as there's something available to try out, to think about, do that. But I think also, I guess, a lot of these things kind of, as you said, they never, or they take a lot longer. Like, oh, I would have said a couple of years ago, everybody should learn about how to design and test language interfaces. It's different than designing and testing visual interfaces. Uh, and there are people who have a career of that. But is that something every UX designer needs to know now? No. Is it useful to think about it? To think about to definitely try out and make sure you've tried out natural language interface, and to think about, okay, if I were designing it, what are the important considerations? To read about it, uh, to think about how you would test for it. I think those are really useful. And I think UX designers should always be spending a small amount of time experiencing and thinking about some of this future stuff. I actually would say, I mean, you and I have talked about this, and maybe I'm wrong on this, and this is probably another one of these. It will take much longer than I think it will. Uh, I happen to think that the whole world of machine learning and AI is very fascinating and has a lot of important lessons for UX designers. because I am of the firm belief that at some point, I just don't know when, a lot of the work that some of the a big piece of the work that we currently talk about as user experience work, as UX design work, as user interface work, is going to be done automatically. And so uh, I'm always saying, when I give talks on the future of UX, I always say, make sure your skill set includes um, the things that humans do and will keep doing. There's that wonderful machine learning and AI course that you and I took, Guthrie, and you remind me about that. He said, "What are the things that humans can do really quickly? Those are the things that are, going to be automated first." So, just think about that. What are the things that humans can't do really quickly that have to do with UX design and UX research? Those are the things that where the future is in the field, in my opinion.
That's funny because a lot of the things that don't happen quickly are some of the things that are the most would be the best for automation. So like I'm thinking about like summarizing insights in user tests. Like it takes a long time. And that would be the perfect thing to automate, but I don't know if you necessarily could because there's so much context.
Well, and that was the whole point, right? And it's kind of given where we are with machine learning and AI algorithms and so on. It, we have a long way to go in that whole world, and so if it's complicated
Yeah.
to do and takes a long time to do, that's probably going to take longer to be done.
I think that's
Right now, machine learning and AI is really working on the things that are fast,
right.
which makes sense.
Like this podcast.
All right, Guthrie, thanks so much for another interesting conversation. And thank you, everyone who joined us. Really exciting to know that there are people joining us as we live stream. We are doing this. Let's just take a quick moment, Guthrie, to talk about what's going on and what's coming up. We do these every Wednesday at noon Central Time. We do a live stream. Join us, please, and listen in and ask questions and let us know what topics you might want us to talk about. We'd be glad to have your input. So I want to mention that if you're we've so much stuff going on in terms of online courses, and we have virtual workshops coming up um, and so on. So if you ever want to learn about those, probably the best thing to do is either use our website, www.theteamw.com, or email us, info@theteamw.com, or follow us on LinkedIn, and where we post about stuff,
Or any of the social media platforms is
or
probably.
any of the social media platforms of your choice. All right. Thanks, Guthrie.
I just
What?
wanted to quickly add
Yeah.
um, that thanks everyone for tuning in,
Yeah.
and we'll be putting this up as well at the as the podcast.
This is our human tech podcast that you can subscribe to and listen to on audio or watch these three streams.
Yep. Okay, thank you.
Bye, everyone.